Hi, I'm here today with one of Bayport's band directors, Mrs. Siegrist, and we're going to get right into it. First off, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yes, hi, thanks for having me. I am, again, Miss Siegrist, and a little bit about myself is that I grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I am a trumpet player. I've played music and musical instruments for over 20 years now at this point. And I have a wonderful husband who happens to be my coworker and partner in crime here as the other band director at Bayport. We have 3 little kiddos, Ari, Jack, and Killian, that make our life very interesting on a daily basis, and they're wonderful. We have a little dog named Louie.
So what was it that made you want to go into music education?
What made me want to go into music education, I guess, would just be a combination of 2 things. One, I always thought it was really cool whenever I'd have a class that I liked a lot. I came to realize over time that my favorite classes weren't necessarily because of the subject that it was in. It was more because of the teacher that taught the class, and I think that other people can relate to that. If you have a teacher that seems really passionate about what they're teaching, or they're just really funny or engaging or whatever, the whole class is more fun. And so I started realizing that I wanted to be that person for other people, and be in a situation where I could share my passion with other people. And so, music was such a huge part of my life from 5th grade when I started trumpet all the way up through high school, and I just couldn't get enough of it. And it also just seemed kind of like a crazy idea that I would be done after high school with ensembles and band and everything that comes along with it, whether that's marching band or pep band or concert music or just the works. And so it was kind of this great a joining of my 2 things, which was, wanting to be that passionate teacher for other people and show them that the subject of music is just a really awesome, cool thing. And then, of course, not wanting to end my music career, right? Just wanting to constantly always be a part of that community of other musicians and making music together.
Now, if you wouldn't have become a band director, what career do you think you would have gone into?
So if I wasn't a band director, I think I still would have been a teacher. I probably would have ended up teaching a different subject. The other thing that I was pretty passionate about, aside from teaching music or being in music, was just anything science. Even in college, after I had declared that I was going to be a music major, I still ended up taking way more science classes than I needed to at Eau Claire to just for fun, just because I loved the subject. So I took everything from oceanography and biology and, anatomy and anything I could get my hands on that was science, until they finally said, okay, you need to stop now. Like, you've got other classes you need to take, and there's no other classes for you to take without actually claiming a major. So I just really like science. And so to get back to the idea of wanting to be a teacher of something I was passionate about, it really wasn't a question if I was going to be a teacher or not. I think I knew I was going to be a teacher from about 8th grade on, probably. But the subject is, I guess, the thing that could have changed along the way. If I hadn't decided to be a band director specifically, I would definitely see myself teaching in sciences or something like that.
So you and your husband are co-band directors, so you work very close together each day. What's that like?
Honestly, I get asked this question a lot because most people, I think, are really weirded out by the idea of working that closely with your spouse. I mean, I do know of some examples where that works well. Like, for example, Mrs. and Mr. Zipper. They're also another band director, married couple. But for me, it's kind of like the dream come true. When we were in Houston and we were teaching, oftentimes, we'd come home and Mr. Siegrist would tell me about his day, and I would tell him about my day and the things that we were kind of working through with our bands and things like that. And we'd always end up saying, like, God, I wish we could just work together, because our philosophies are the same. Us coming to Eau Claire, I think, was an important part of us kind of growing and coming up with the same philosophy for why we teach. And so we go in every day kind of with the same mindset and what we're trying to accomplish in our classes. And so it just kind of works. It works really well. I respect Mr. Siegrist greatly, and I know that it's a shared thing the other way. So we never really have to worry about whether one of us gets frustrated that we are sharing that role. And it's really, I think, a good thing too for students. I think, it is funny at times because, they get a little bit of that personal life kind of that pops through every once in a while, where we, kind of argue through something together or, tease each other or whatever. But the main thing that I think is kind of nice about having somebody, working so closely with your spouse is that we tag team and we team teach everything. I know there are a lot of programs that have two band directors, but I think a lot of times what they do instead is they just say, okay, this is your band, this is your band, and they don't interact as a unit. And so because we are married and because we work so closely and so well together, the natural decision for us was to team teach all the classes. And so we, as a pair, we were able to have somebody up on the podium, somebody walking around, either playing with a certain section of the band or just listening to give extra feedback or putting out fires like copying music or fixing instruments or whatever else needs to happen. And so the flow of a rehearsal, I think in general, it benefits from the fact that we are able to function that way. And I think it's all just because being married and working with your spouse is, for us, the perfect thing.
Right. In a similar vein as the last question, what is your favorite overall memory as a teacher?
My favorite memory as a teacher, that is truly the hardest thing you think you could ask me, Kyler. I think I'm going to go with one, though, that I think is truly awesome. And that is that, over the course of me being a band director, I went from, being just very career focused to then becoming a mom. And when you become a mom, no matter who you are, you have this whole shift in your identity. And at first, for the first 5 years of teaching, I just didn't think I could be a mom. I'm like, how could I do that? I already have 180 kids. I can't possibly have the time to have my own kids. But as I grew as a teacher and became closer with a lot of my students and watched them grow, I realized I wanted to have kids of my own that could grow up and be as awesome as my current band students were. And so when I did decide to have kids, that was really tough on my students because that meant that at some point I would leave to go on maternity leave and everything else, and I wouldn't be there. And because I had developed all those really strong relationships in that community, me not being there was like a huge void for a lot of those students. And so I was very sensitive to the fact that when I was gone with when my daughter was born, I took a very short maternity leave. I was actually only gone 15 days of school, just because of how it laid out with with the Thanksgiving break and Christmas break and all that good stuff. So although it was a 6-week maternity leave, only 15 days of it were actual school days. And so the way that impacted them, though, even just that being 15 days, people that, a lot of my students that were those band room dwellers that really wanted to be there all the time felt lost. And so when I did end up having my twins, or when I found out I was pregnant with the twins, I knew that was going to be a longer maternity leave, that it was going to make even more of an impact because I had watched how just 15 days was impactful for them with my first child. And so I was looking for ways to kind of help my students feel okay with the fact that I was going to be gone for 60 plus days of school coming up in the spring. So over the summer, I hadn't told the students before the end of the year that I was pregnant. I waited until summer band camp, and there was no denying it at that point because with twins, your belly is pretty much right there for everybody to see pretty quickly. So I had this baby bump going, and I knew I needed to do something. So I told them at the beginning of band camp that I was having twins, and that they were identical twins, so they were either going to be 2 boys or 2 girls. And at that point, I had just found out the gender of our boys, and I decided to kind of create this whole experience where I had the students be involved in this gender reveal, because that's not normally my thing. Like, I don't need the big parties with all the colors, and all that stuff. But I figured it would be a way to share that moment with my students. And it ended up being probably one of my favorite moments because the way we did it is that traditionally I would always have my students tie-dye a shirt during band camp. And so they balled up their shirt, put a bunch of rubber bands on it and whatever pattern they wanted to. But instead of it just being dumped in the same, purple color that we would do, which was our school color, I actually had the students put their their shirt all balled up and ready to tie-dye, I had them choose if they wanted to drop it into the pink dye or into the blue dye. And that was their way of kind of deciding or betting on the gender of our twins. So fast forward, that was Monday or Tuesday. If you fast forward to Friday, the last day of band camp, we all had our shirts ready to go. The kids put their shirts on. I intentionally wore white so that I was extremely neutral. And we had a box that was wrapped up in baby paper, and there were balloons inside. And I told the students, okay, stand on either the pink side or the blue side, and I'm going to open this box, and these balloons are going to come out, and you're going to know if your guess was correct. And that was just such a fun moment because they were all so invested in the gender reveal. And when those blue balloons came out, oh my God, the boys' side just erupted with pride that they figured it out. And I have this whole moment on video, and it's just a fun thing for me to look back on and watch those kids just be so excited for me, and also that it was all still a part of our family as a band. So since then, they were able to meet my kids, and it's just, my kids have always been a part of band, and so for sure that's got to be the favorite memory. It's hard to pick just one, but I think that's it.
Thank you for taking some time to talk to me today. Yeah.